All right. So, Aguirre, The Wrath of God. Wow. This movie tells the story of a doomed expedition with a striking opening shot of
Hmm.
many, many people and a terrifying closing shot of just one. Now, much of the film resembles a documentary more than it does an action picture, and it's also a very non Hollywood type of movie. So, a little bit of background. When he was a young man, director Werner Herzog discovered a book on historic adventurers and found a very short entry on Lope de Aguirre, a Spanish conquistador who searched for the lost city of El Dorado. Now, there's actually very little written about Aguirre, but Herzog decided to basically create his own story, almost all of which is totally fictional. Now, here, Aguirre rebels not so much against the Spanish crown, but against nature and loses. Near the end of the film, the massive expedition has diminished to a pathetic handful of the sick and dying who've lost all sense of hope, direction, and in some cases, sanity. Now, Herzog himself stated, quote, things steadily move into delirium and become hallucinatory, as if the audience is being taken directly into the interior of things. Now, the physical struggles that you see on screen were real. The river actually rose 15 feet overnight and took away a raft. The natives had to build one the next day. Food ran low. At least one man was almost killed while making the film. This was at the hands of Klaus Kinski, the actor who plays Aguirre. Now, Herzog has said that the movie had two major problems: the budget and Klaus Kinski. The budget was around $370,000, one third of which was Kinski's salary. Now, Herzog, who was only 28 years old at the time, only used one camera, which was all he had. In fact, he stole that camera from the Munich Film School.
Mm.
Somehow he finished the film, and miraculously, nobody died. I don't know how. In an interview about what it was like to work with Kinski, Herzog said this, and I love this quote: I knew of his reputation, that he was probably the most difficult actor in the world to deal with. Working with Marlon Brando must have been like kindergarten in comparison. While filming a scene, Kinski nearly killed an actor when he struck him on the head with his sword.
Mm.
Thankfully, the man was wearing a helmet, although he carries a scar to this very day. Kinski was a complete pestilence and a nightmare, and working with him became about maintaining my dignity under the worst conditions. It's also true that I call every gray hair on my head Kinski. But who cares about such things now? What's important is that the work was done and the films were made. End of quote. Now, astonishingly, Herzog worked with Kinski four more times. Francis Ford Coppola called this film, along with Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, one of the major inspirations for his film Apocalypse Now. Roger Ebert placed Aguirre in his all-time top 10 films. Now, everybody doesn't feel quite the same way. Other critics look at the movie and consider it a case of the emperor has no clothes. Now, having seen it, what are your thoughts on the film?
Okay, Bill B, Bill S, Jan Wale,
Yeah,
and
I
Susan.
feel exactly that, Andy. In a way, this is sort of a hard film to like because it's so distancing. It's really hard to get close to any of the characters, though, granted, Klaus Kinski's performance is amazing and powerful, kind of seething underneath the surface. And I'm sure we'll get into it later. The stories around this that I've been reading in reviews and Wikipedia. In fact, I took the trouble to watch My Best Fiend, which is the story of Klaus Kinski and Werner Herzog's uh, collaborations, and it's just uh, it's crazy, and that alone is worth the price of admission. But uh, even though I was put off a little bit by the kind of lack of a dramatic core to it, with hardly any dialogue and things that got more and more haphazard as they went. Thematically, it's incredibly rich. And one of the reviews I had read got into how it's like an allegory of Germany under Hitler, and obviously it's a really big meditation on hubris and the whole thing about cultures and a culture trying to go in and completely overwhelm what they think of as a savage culture that they can put under their thumb and do whatever they wish, and they're defeated by it. And nature is such a big part. Nature is its own character, and nature slowly crushes them along with the surrounding scenario. And I was really impressed by the fact that he did this all with one camera, and as you said, a stolen camera. And I love the fact that the opening shot is Huayna Picchu, which is that main mountain right over Machu Picchu. My wife and I went there just a couple of years ago, and it's so ethereal and amazing. And the whole thing about the choir organ, as you say, there's endless things to talk about, both in and outside of the movie. So I'm just going to leave it right there for the moment.
Okay, great comments, Bill. There's lots in what you say that we'll probably touch on as far as the nature aspect. Certainly touches on colonialism, and I also hope that we'll get to talk about the music a little bit more too. Darnice, who was next?
So Bill S.
Okay.
Well, I didn't really enjoy the movie at all. I had trouble. Yeah, the opening shot was interesting, but I had trouble when I see a guy carrying the cannon barrel all by himself. And then a little bit later, there's a cannon falling down the hill with the wheels on, with all the other stuff, and it blows up. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I just felt like a lot of it felt amateurish. It was like shots were held too long. Nothing really was going on. And so I really, really had a lot of trouble with it. And I really felt Klaus, he had the same expression on his face the whole movie. It just didn't grab me at all, the whole thing. Just so many things just didn't seem realistic to me. And I just felt like the way it was done just felt amateurish. I had problems with it.
Okay, no, I appreciate you being honest, and we will address some of the reasons why some of those things that you mentioned were happening or not happening. Yeah, thank you, Bill.
Go ahead, Jan.
Well, first off, Happy New Year, everybody. I'm glad we're still here. And I have to send my thanks to Andy and, of course, Darnice. Never in a million years would I have watched this movie. Never. And I thank you because you've gotten me out of my little classic movie mold that I was in. So I wouldn't have watched this one unless I saw that opening shot of them coming down the mountain, which to me was one of the most breathtaking openings I've ever seen in a movie. I mean that sincerely. That descent down with all those people, you're not at first sure what's going on, and then you realize all the people through the clouds. I finished up watching it today, and I was going to Google this, but I ran out of time. It reminded me of the movie Avatar. Remember the floating mountain? Oh. I don't know, with the clouds around it. I was going to see if perhaps that inspiration came from that. But anyway, Kinski, who I didn't know that much about, I have to say, I think Herzog got every dime out of him. This, to me, he certainly carried the movie in a sadistic, bad guy, but you couldn't take your eyes off him. So that's a comment. And then finished up watching it today, and we don't have to go too far into this, but I think, yeah, there's an allegory there, and I think we can take it to a little bit more modern times than Hitler. So I'll just leave it at that. And we can proceed now.
Okay. Point taken. Very good.
Okay, Wale is next.
Yeah.
And then we've got, well, before Wale, so just so I remember, I got Susan, then Ethan, then Sue.
Yeah, this is one I probably wouldn't have seen myself. And funny enough, I surprised I never heard of it up till now. It started it was kind of slow, but very good visuals. And then people start talking, and it's a German dub. Now, normally, I like to listen to the original language. So, first of all, the Canopy app was just messing up, just kept timing out and all what's not. So, I got to notice, wait, these guys are speaking English. I noticed their lips were like mouthing English. I was like, what's going on here? So I went to YouTube. I found on YouTube the English version. Now, if somehow the recording was the original German, I mean, or if they originally spoke German, and then it wasn't a dub, I would definitely have stuck with it. But I was like, why am I watching a German dub?
English film.
Yeah, right? It makes no sense. So I went to YouTube, watched it in English, and noticed that, they were also dubbing in English. So I felt maybe not everybody spoke English, but I found out, everybody spoke English, but the language, I mean, the set, they couldn't use the on-set sound, so they had to dub over. But back to the film, I felt it was slow, but I was amazed at the visuals. I was amazed at the fact that they were doing these things without CGI. So I was like, these guys are actually risking people's lives. There's no doubt about it. That water looks really, really, really dangerous. And then I loved Kinski's performance. He actually like twisted himself. He was this really grotesque character. And if he isn't like that, if he wasn't like that in real life, then that's some really good acting. If he was like that in real life, then that's some awesome, strange, powerful presence that I'm so glad I was able to see as a documentary. I don't know. And then towards the end, everything devolves. And as a narrative with the 3-act structure, it feels empty. But like, was it Bill that said that as an allegory, it's good. It's actually where there are lots of lessons to be learned from the movie.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, Susan. No, other Susan with the puppy.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, I have to unmute.
Yeah.
I actually watched it on Prime with in German with English subtitles. I always prefer to watch a movie in the language it's actually filmed in. Even though I don't understand German, you pick up a little. I think you pick up more of the acting, and I'm okay reading subtitles. So the big thing that I took away, and this that really struck me, and I'm not going to avoid the topic, is how it showed people descending into madness who knew better, who followed this guy, even though he was obviously from the very beginning as crazy as you know what. And any rationality any of the people had, any sense of self-preservation, except for the 2 characters, just disappeared. And to the end where they all just are destroyed by following this, it was just the group madness thing is what really struck me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great points. Wonderful points.
Okay, Ethan, you're next. Hey.
Hello, everyone. Since I'm new to the group, I just want to say that my name is Ethan Hislop, and I'm a freshman filmmaking major at Stevenson University.
Oh,
and when I first heard that the library was doing this. I'd never heard of this before, but it's apparently been going on for a while. I thought this was, and I love Canopy, and I hope I can be on here more times in the future.
Yeah, well,
We
you're
hope
always
so
welcome.
too. Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, I watched The Wrath of God with my father last night because he thought it was pretty interesting, and it was a little rough to start, mainly because it was so slow. But after it finished, how do I explain this? I'm trying to think of the words. There are fast movies, like fast-paced action movies, and there are super slow character studies. That's what we generally think of films as. But Aguirre, The Wrath of God, was the slowest fast movie I have ever seen.
Wow.
That's a great.
I'm gonna write that down.
So there's so much power. There's so much happening, and yet nothing is happening. And my father says, who's right next to me right now, he says the movie plods along very quickly. And I think it's a good phrase. I loved this movie. This was absolutely fantastic. It was unlike anything I've ever seen before. The score, the sets, the fact, it's one of those movies, it really shouldn't exist when you hear the production tales, the effort that was put into making it, all the stuff that went wrong. This really should not be a thing. This should have been tanked at least 100 different points throughout the production. And yet I'm so happy that it worked. And one last thing that I wanted to say, a couple people were talking about watching it in German or watching it in English. I actually read on the internet that the whole movie was shot in English because it was the one language that every actor had in common. And I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly. Werner Herzog, he wanted the dialogue to be in German. So he sent the audible audio to a guy along with part of the budget so he could take it back to Germany and get it set up for redubbing. And he took the money and ran. So Werner Herzog had to end up re-recording every single English line of dialogue in German and in English for the English dubbed version.
That makes more sense now.
And last thing I want to say is that Klaus Kinski demanded too much money for his redubbing, so Werner Herzog just got another guy. And I think that's nice.
Wow, you did some great research, Ethan. Very, very good.
Yeah, I really like it.
That's awesome. Yeah, Wally made the point in the chat that the behind the scenes documentary might have been more exciting than the film. Just what's going on.
Right.
Yeah, we need a Heart of Darkness for this apocalypse now.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Sue, you're next.
Yeah. Well, when I got started, I guess because of being isolated, I'm in a calm space. And so coming down the mountain with these shots of these various groups of people and the torment and the music set it to be as an ethereal type of thing. And I'm very interested in the conquistadors. And it was exciting to see that Pizarro, all that stuff. And I thought it showed the conflict between the way they treated the Indians and how the Indians finally got them back. And it might have been a fight against nature, but it was really the cleverness of the natives to terrify them in this surrounding. And so whereas Cortez could have conquered the Incas because of ignorance, these guys were placed in the reverse position where they were the ignorant ones. And so I love to see that play out. Now, I have issues with some of the details, which I'd like to go into later, except that I will have to say, how in the world did those women wear those clothes all through that piece and never get a wrinkle?
Or dirty.
But I've also read the book River of Doubt about Teddy Roosevelt's
Has anybody read that? He's
Yeah.
going down a tributary of the Amazon that had been not explored. And the same thing. There were actually cannibalistic Indians in that area. But as the raft went down, he's sitting there like a great big poobah, and like a big, and they decided that might be God, and they did not kill him. So he got by, but the next two rafts that came by, they killed. So that they definitely would have killed him if they hadn't thought he was some sort of God.
Gotcha.
So I found that so similar to what these people were doing that I just liked it. And last but not least, it showed the terrible behaviors, like the priest saying, well, the church supports the strong, the dynamics of how this guy managed to be on top. And so I like that.
Good insight, Sue. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we forgot Bob, then Bill, then Jackie.
Okay.
Oh, Debbie, was your hand up too? Oh, okay. Go ahead, Bob. Unmute.
I'm sorry, I didn't really have anything to say. Did you think?
Oh, I thought I saw your hand up. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead. That's fine.
later. I'm still.
All right. It's still germinating, huh?
At least I'm not falling asleep the way I did in the movie.
Okay, because so I'm going to interject right now because I have to say that I was asked to watch this film in college and fell asleep on it twice. Couldn't
Wow.
get through it.
Yeah.
I only got through it for you guys. And it was I also have some issues with it, but hearing other people's passion about it, I maybe need to rethink it. I don't know.
Well, let's get the other two that we have,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
I have something after that might help. It might not.
Okay. So then Bill and Jackie.
So you have to say that this is the ultimate mood movie.
Mood mute? Oh, okay.
I mean, it set the mood from the very beginning with the opening shot and the music and the smoke and the fog. And then for an hour and a half, it set the same exact mood, where there was this feeling that something ominous was about to happen. And lots of ominous things did happen, but they didn't seem to really, they certainly didn't change the mood, and they didn't change the pace, and they almost lacked impact because of that. And then I want to know how Andy can predict events and pick movies that are actually apropos for the week that we just had.
He's a genius.
I'll never tell. Okay.
Your voice is breaking up a little bit, Bill.
I better stop.
Okay. All right. So Jackie.
I'm glad that Andy had a little bit of an intro that explained what the budget story was on this. First of all, I agree with many of the others that the opening scene was what drew me in. If it hadn't been that good, I might have gone. And I felt really sorry for the guys lugging that stuff up and down. There's actually steps there. Does anybody notice there's stone steps? So that means it's a regular path. Holy cow.
Yeah.
But Andy said that they didn't have the money because Kinski's salary took it up. Because clearly they didn't hire an editor. But there are things that kept you going on it anyway. You kept looking, just like Wale was saying, you're kind of trying to see, how did they do that? They had the raging river, remember? Like, oh my God, your camera's going to get swept away. It turns out that you're running over the camera. I mean, it was amazing. So it was more about how they did it. And, there's a million bugs there. Every expedition writes about the bugs and the potential for disease there. So for a film crew there, doing all that, that would be at least as interesting a story as the movie. And of course, you've seen Kinski in lots of things. He's a great moody guy. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who stands out in whatever. He was in A Fistful of Dollars. He had a bit part in A Fistful of Dollars, a spaghetti western. I'm like,
that's how I knew him.
amazing thing, but I just agree. I kept thinking, I guess the way I would summarize it is, I kept thinking, part of me kept thinking like Wale, this would be a great documentary. I'd like to see behind the scenes. And the other part of me is like, boy, if the guy who did The Far Side, Gary Lashley, could see this, he'd have lots of things to, to joke about.
That's a great observation.
That's awesome.
I wonder if he saw it. That's
I
a good
don't know.
question.
I saw a hand go up. I didn't see who was. Oh, Jeff, Bob. That's right. Bob, you had yours, and then Jeff.
Yeah,
Oh,
I kind of
sorry.
want to
Go ahead,
sit.
Jeff.
Am I going?
It's okay. You go.
Okay, I just wanted to kind of sit back and see what people thought of this, because honestly, if you pulled me 365 days in a row, I would probably, on the majority of them, I would tell you this is my favorite movie of all time. I love it. I think it's not a perfect movie, but I just think it's so grand, and I would call it operatic. That's what it seems like to me. I don't know of anything that can equal it for bookending a great opening scene and a classic closing scene, which they're both just magnificent scenes to me. The music, which is so strange, so ethereal, somebody had called it that, which I can't think of a better adjective for it, but it is so absolutely perfect for what it's describing. And it's used sparingly, but it's used so well and so brilliantly. I love just the way you can look at this and say, oh man, that production had to be an ordeal, you know. And it predicts, especially when they're on the raft at the beginning, and you can see the actors are saying, well, this isn't good, but I don't think they're acting it. And I'm watching them, I think, oh my God, I hope you survive this. And Herzog even lets the water on the camera stay there. He didn't go back and get another shot, which is a very peculiar thing to do, but it just works so well there, because you're right there with them, you know, like, ooh, this is going to be bad, you know. I guess that's all I have to say for now. I did want to hear what people said, and I can certainly understand. I don't understand people who think it's slow, because I've never thought that. I just think it flies by. But anyway, that's all I have to say for now.
Okay. Well, thanks. So Bob, Bob, Debbie, then Bill.
All I knew about Herzog before watching this last night was that he had bet Errol Morris that he would eat his shoe if Errol Morris ever finished The Gates of Heaven. I could watch The Gates of Heaven 10 times in a row. I like anything that Errol Morris did, but this, I was not expecting this, and as much as like everyone else enjoying that first dramatic scene. I thought this could really be great, and it might have been if Terrence Malick had directed it. We would have seen some dramatic film, but I know I'm always a base into Ebert and the rest, but all I could think of with that first scene was what Ebert and Siskel said one night about horror movies. You always start off with a gigantic cast because you're going to have to kill 90% of the people. So I was expecting this to end about the way it did, but as I said earlier, I never could get over the idea that these Spanish conquistadors were speaking German. I know that's petty, but it just upset me.
That's okay. Let's see, Darnies, did we have Debbie? Was that Debbie? Were you?
I was muted. Sorry. Yeah. Debbie, then Bill, and then we'll get to Andy's wrap up of
no hurry. All
of our things.
Well, actually, there's so much I could say about this movie. First of all, I thought immediately of Apocalypse Now when they started to lose momentum there on the river, and these people, you know, these savages, whatever, show up on the shore and start, the arrows come and all that. So the parallels to Apocalypse Now were just like leaping out at me. But as far as Klaus Kinski, I knew him from A Few Dollars More. He played the hunchback who got into it with Lee Van Cleef. I've always thought of him as a guy with a perpetual scowl. But I noticed he smiled once in this movie at the girl.
Creepily.
And it was like, wow, all right. Because I was thinking, I wonder what he looks like when he smiles. And there it was. But kind of creepy, yeah. But it was just, at least it was a smile, you know. And as far as like the opening, I mean, it was spectacular. But then you get down to the ground level and you see these people, and to me, they just looked freaking absurd. I mean, it's like, you don't belong there with your cannon, for God's sake. You're shoving a cannon down this ridiculous path in the middle of the forest, this jungle, and cannons and those things that they were carrying the women in. I was like, what the? Obviously, there's a clash of cultures going on here. There's all sorts of stuff. And the other thing I was going to say, I'm looking at my notes trying to figure out what I was going to say. Yeah, the, oh God, now I've forgotten it. The, what Ethan said about moving, plotting, but you know, fast or something like that. Exciting, but plotting. I've seen a movie that is just about the same length as this one that plotted even slower, believe it or not. Just one of my least favorite, I mean, honestly, probably my least favorite movie of all time. But I thought that this was a good movie. And what?
It is.
And it is, yeah.
And it is. Oh, I have to tell you what it is. Well, yeah, this movie just sucks, in my opinion. It's called 2 or 3 Things I Know About Her. Jean-Luc Godard at his most pretentious, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, we'll have to do a Godard movie.
That will be a Debbie.
But not that one, please. Please, I beg you, not 2 or 3 Things I Know About Her. Oh God, it was an awful movie. Awful. Anyway,
okay, all right.
I like this movie. I thought I could see the act breaks myself, and I thought that Kinski was quite something in it. I can imagine just making this thing. Just the thought of it is exhausting.
Yeah.
But it was quite a movie, and I enjoyed it. I'm glad we watched it.
I'm glad you watched it too.
Yeah, awesome. So that with Bill one more time.
A lot of really interesting things have been said so far, because what Debbie just said there struck me as well about the nature of the incongruity of trying to bring the trappings of civilization and tramp them through the wilderness, like, oh yeah, we've vanquished the Incas and we own everything, and now we're going to go get the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow in El Diablo, which of course was a myth that the Incas came up with to, we'll get even with these guys. And I think the earlier statement about descent into madness is so right. And it struck me that, because I also agree with the idea that it often felt like there was no editing in this picture, like Jackie was saying. But I also got the feeling that Herzog wanted to kind of, particularly in the last third of the picture, when it was all descending into madness, he sort of wanted you to feel like you are trapped out there in this wilderness with them, feeling what they do, feeling the interminability of going down the raft, knowing pretty much that even though you've got these hopes and aspirations of all of this gold at the end of the rainbow, knowing more and more that this is a disastrous trip, probably everybody's going to die. And the fact that people started to just, almost all the shots of people getting killed were sort of off camera. Like you'd see, they'd come to, the camera would change the shot and there'd be a guy laying on the ground with an arrow in his neck, or they'd find the fat prince garroted behind the shack on the raft.
The
It was so dreamlike. It was like as they were descending in madness, as they were starving more and more, I think it became more and more apparent to them they didn't know what was real and what was things that they were imagining. Like the guy that was standing on the edge of the raft, and he caught this huge spear in the gut, and he just sort of comically says, "Oh, I didn't know they had this kind of spear," and then he turns and falls into the water. And it was kind of that level of madness and dissolution. But the other thing I just wanted to mention quickly was, and I think maybe Andy will have more to say about it. If you've got, it might be on Canopy as well, but I saw this on Comcast. They had My Best Fiend, which is this documentary. And again, the stories of Herzog and Kinski. And one of the things that Herzog did was Kinski had a different way of approaching the movie. He wanted to play it as a totally over-the-top madman raving all through it. And Herzog said, no, I don't want to do it that way. So he would let Kinski rave on set till he got tired, and then he would run the camera. And there's all of these stories like that. So it's very much worth seeing that My Best Fiend to kind of get an idea of what their relationship was. And the parallels with Apocalypse Now are really there. And there's a documentary that was made about Apocalypse Now called Heart of Darkness, which parallels lots of what's going on here too, because it was how crazy it was on set and how both Martin Sheen and Francis Ford Coppola thought they were going crazy while it was being filmed, and they both had heart attacks on set. And so it sort of carried that same karma as this movie seems to. So like say, kind of endless discussions on things surrounding the movie. So I'm looking forward to hearing what more Andy has to say on that and everybody else.
Okay. Well, wow. You guys have gotten some great comments. Really, really tremendous stuff. I want to try to address some of the things that we're talking about because many of you have some great comments, people that liked the film, people that didn't like the film. So one of the things, I'll try to find a link to this, but first there's an appearance when Werner Herzog was on the Conan O'Brien show several years ago. And he made a statement there about, people that want to make films shouldn't go to film school. And then O'Brien says, well,
no offense, Ethan.
yeah, no offense. But he said, well, you have a film school. And Herzog says, yes, but my film school is only a week or two. And in that film school, I teach students how to falsify documents, how to steal cameras, things you really need to know. So Ethan, don't try this with your professors. But Herzog is just such an unorthodox filmmaker. Now this was his 6th film. And the films that he made before this, I have not seen, but I think are even less narrative driven than this one. Now, on an interesting aside, I bought this book several weeks ago, Werner Herzog, A Guide for the Perplexed, which I think any of us could be perplexed after watching any of his films, but it's a really great book. The guy that wrote it is named Paul Cronin. Now, he interviewed Herzog, and actually I contacted Cronin to see if he wanted to be on tonight's program. And he's a very nice gentleman that's an academic in the UK. And he said, thank you for the invitation. After weeks and months of interviewing Werner Herzog, I don't ever want to talk about Werner Herzog again in my life. So thank you for the invitation, but no.
Wow.
So here's something that Herzog said in an interview that might explain some of the reactions that some of us may have. He said, quote, "My films come to me very much alive, like dreams, without explanation. I never think about what it all means. I think only about telling a story, and however illogical the images, I let them invade me." So there's a lot in that we could probably understand and say, yeah, it seems like it. There was a script to this film. There was also a lot that was not scripted. One of the things that Herzog liked to do in this film and in every film is to put people in a situation that will put them under some type of pressure and just film what happens. And you see a lot of that. A lot of the things that we see are totally unscripted. And a lot of the times when nothing seems to happen, that's what he's interested in doing. He wants to see what their, minute to minute reactions are, even if it's boredom. That's important to him. So there's a lot of things that are unscripted here. Sometimes he just lets the camera run. One of those scenes that I think Jeff pointed out is a shot early in the film. It's a close-up of these turbulent waters. I mean, a typical director would have spent maybe 5 or 10 seconds on that shot, but Herzog spends nearly a minute. Mm-hmm. He wants us to feel uncomfortable with this. I think, I haven't spoken with him. I think he wants us to do things like that, and the images where the jungle is beautiful, but it's also dangerous. And I think he wants to do a lot of that. If you'll notice, there's quite a bit of the film that has the bird sounds in the background, and it's almost like white noise. But then he removes them, and you're very uncomfortable with that silence, just like you were uncomfortable with that silence, because something is about to happen that's not going to be good. So Herzog is really playing the audience when it's scripted, when it's not scripted, to take a look at those things. Not only nature being beautiful and dangerous, but also the natives. What are they doing? We see very little of them, so they're constantly in the back of our mind saying, what are they doing? When are they going to do something? Are they going to attack? I think we could say that part of what Herzog is doing here is showing, obviously, the arrogance and greed of man coming into conflict with nature and other cultures. But again, I think he also wants to explore how people react under stressful conditions. And again, some of those were scripted, some of them were not. As Jeff mentioned, Herzog has directed operas before, which may strike us as something surprising, but maybe not.
Not really.
Yeah, he is just a very, very unconventional director. So I definitely want some more comments, but I want to bring up something we haven't really touched on very much yet, and that's the role of the women in this film. I mean, there aren't very many women. There's Donna Inez, Don Pedro's mistress, who's played by Helena Rojo, and Aguirre's daughter, Flores, played by Cecilia Rivera. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, how are they different from the men in this film? What do you think?
Oh, wait a minute. I totally missed that. Flores was Aguirre's daughter?
Yes.
Okay, then that makes that less creepy. Sorry.
It's still creepy.
I mean, it is, but the tenderness that he was showing to her on many occasions now makes more sense as, maybe fatherly, creepy love, but not incestuous, which is okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff, I think you're first.
Yeah, well, actually, Darnase, I've seen this so many times, but I actually did see something for the first time, I think, this time. And that refers to Aguirre and his daughter. Because there's a scene very early in the movie where she's in the sedan chair and they're stopped at a break or something. And he's got the curtain pulled aside and he's peering in at her.
He's peeling his like.
And then he closes it up like he's very conscious that somebody's watching him and he's creeping out. So. And he does make that weird comment at the end when his mind is turned to mush, I will marry my own daughter and found the greatest dynasty the world has ever seen, something like that. But I go back to that little, very, very short little bit at the beginning and I think, yeah, there's something there that I didn't ever notice before.
Yeah, a little creepy.
The women are not given much to do in this, although Inez is very much gets in Aguirre's face because I think she knows what's going to happen to her husband. Like it's fairly obvious that's going to happen. But I think the two death scenes of the women are two of the most melancholy and poignant death scenes I've ever seen in movies. Well, not the Helena Rojo's death scene, but when they take Ursula away to kill him, and they just have a very brief shot from behind of her, and you can just I think see her looks like she's wiping a tear away. Like I always thought that that shot was just a sledgehammer. You know, it's so subtle and it's respectful of her. It stands back, but I just find that's so sad. And then when the daughter dies, you don't see at first what's happened to her because she's got her eyes open. You still think she's alive and she's just staring at her dad, and then they pull back and you see the arrow, and then you see the blood on his hand. I just thought that was just a devastating scene as well.
Yeah, I would agree. Oh, so Ethan had his hand up earlier before you started your comments. So let's get back to him. Go ahead, Ethan.
This wasn't about the role of women stuff and all that you had just been mentioning. This was a separate thing, but after watching the movie, I had been reading several reviews on the internet of other people's interpretations of it, and I found one that I thought was very, very interesting and not something I noticed, but makes perfect sense. One person thought that the only person who wasn't driven to madness was Aguirre himself. They argued that he was the most sane, the most pragmatic person in the whole expedition. And the reason they say this is that, quote, he doesn't lose his mind in the jungle so much as recognize right away that the chaos of the jungle suits his particular brand of grand delusion, and then proceeds to embrace the possibilities. And I thought that was a very, very good way of looking at it. A lot of people say this is a descent into madness, but maybe it's that for everybody but Aguirre. Maybe he started out as the wrath of God the whole time.
Very interesting. I like that interpretation.
I love Jackie's Littlefinger reference there in the chat. Chaos is a ladder. That I hearing your your commentary, Ethan, and some of the other people, I mean, I can totally see this as an art piece being a fantastic movie, that there was a lot going on. Maybe the character development wasn't overt. It was something that was implied. And that whole part about, Aguirre being sane. I mean, he truly was manipulative the entire time. And I'm almost positive that anyone whose death was mysteriously not by Indians was by Aguirre. I mean, I even believe that he killed Guzman, but who knows? But it's never known. So that part was also kind of interesting. But I about the women though, I felt like I wondered what the point of them being there was. It was clearly that they were the ones being ushered in the sedan chairs, carried on a pedestal. Um, they were not catered to at all. They had servants that we didn't necessarily see, but they paid to make sure that they were fed and taken care of, but we didn't see that part of them. We only saw them in relation to their either connection to Aguirre and the other Dons, or just as in the background. So I'm really interested in seeing. I almost wonder if the movie could still stand as it was without them being there. If it was an all male cast, I honestly could see that wasn't necessarily they weren't necessarily key figures for me. Jan and Sue and Jim.
Okay.
Jan, Sue, Jin.
Well, the two women characters were very important to those two men. So I took it, that's why they were there. But the other thing, getting back to the scenes, I thought the mistress's scene when she walked into the jungle, to me, was very moving. That, she's clearly, whatever chances she's taken in the jungle were better than what she had on the raft with this crew. I don't know. To me, it was a very moving, and the way she just kept silently walking forward, I thought it was very impactful. I do have a quick question if we can get to it. In part of craziness and descent into madness and all that, the one thing I didn't get was when the two Indians came out on the raft and approached the raft, and then when the brother offered them a Bible and he put it up to his ear and they struck him down, were they killed? I read a review that said they were killed just because
they were hard to convert. They
Wow.
showed
Yeah.
the showed the blade, and the blade was covered with stone.
These are the Christians? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it just seemed like it went so quick, and I go, surely they didn't kill him that quick because
they committed sacrilege by
Yeah,
dropping.
you see the sword. You see the sword with blood on it, Jen.
Yeah, you
Okay.
really do. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks. That wasn't immediately clear to me.
No, that's
Gotcha.
good. Good question.
Yeah, good question.
Was Jim
Sue,
next?
Sue, and then Jim.
Sue and then Jim. Okay.
Yeah, and then Wale.
Well, I wasn't quite sure why the women were there, but I also had a feeling that it displayed a sense of what civilization was, and it showed their more gentle natures and how much they were respected. But it always bothered me. Why were they such idiots to go? But I do want to raise one other thing is, in reading The River of Doubt, there are two things. The place is filled with animals and bugs and horrible creatures that fester on you, and none of that occurred in this movie. I don't know where the bugs went to.
They did this. Yeah. They did this every now and then.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they were there.
Well, if you read this thing about the people that found the lost city of the Monkey City, they all came back with this horrible disease. But also, in the Amazon, there's a huge amount of fish and food. So I'm not sure quite why they were starving. So just that those pieces were bothersome. So and I'm not quite sure about the women, other than that sort of a juxtaposition of civilization.
Or royalty. Okay. Jim.
All right.
Yeah. One thing about when Inez walked off by herself, I was really stunned by that. But the thing I thought was interesting that she had a new dress on that was brand new, white.
Yes.
Yes.
Dark blue. And so, boom, this is a totally new, she's going on to something new and a different world and maybe ascending on high or something, you know. And so that was that one. And the other thing I thought I had while I was watching it is that they brought the two women along so that they could propagate the race, you know, and keep the white civilization going in their new El Dorado kingdom.
That's true. That is very true.
Hadn't thought of that.
Hadn't thought about that. And it should. Okay, Wale, and then Debbie.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. That the two women, they were not necessarily brought by the characters in the movie to propagate the race, but the story needs women in that particular band of people so that the idea of them starting their own colony makes sense. So as a plot device for the story, they need to be there. That's one. Two, they're there. A little bit of variety, I guess. And then finally, the Inez, she was there to provide the emotional anchor, like the person who would miss this fellow if he died. The other lady didn't really get to do much except maybe show the tender side of Aguirre. So they had minor roles to play, but yeah, they had to be there to some extent. And then one more thing, I try not to look down on movies based on. I try not to look down on movies based on what they do with women, especially if they're older movies, and especially if the set and plot makes sense. Like if it's a really dangerous, a dangerous expedition like this, it makes sense not to have many women there. So the plot, it's okay for the plot. If it's a war, movie set in the olden days, yeah, maybe, back then we didn't have many women soldiers. One movie I like to use an example is The Thing. There's nary a woman in sight, but no one's going to convince me that that's not an awesome, awesome movie.
Yeah, it is. I love that movie. I'm glad you like it.
That's funny. Okay, Debbie.
Well, I was just going to say that the women provided a needed emotional counterpoint to the men. Being that Inez was the only one who would stand up at all to Aguirre, she was somewhat heroic, I thought, in that sense. And the way she walked off like that was like, I'm done. I'm out of here. And the change of dress, everything. I was also going to say the two women were the only characters I could think of who weren't motivated by greed or the blind devotion to Aguirre or religion, either one of those.
Yeah, no, great points.
Yeah,
very, very
definitely.
good. Well, I know we're getting pretty close. Actually, it's a little bit after 8, so I really only have one more question for you. Of course, we can do more comments before we get to our recommendations. But as I mentioned before, obviously it's an incredible understatement to say that Kinski was a handful, but he's incredible in this. And as some of you have mentioned in most of his other films, at least the ones that I've seen, you may have read or know that Herzog actually instructed Kinski to walk like a crab during this film to make him more inhuman than he already was. Now, the entire crew was absolutely terrified of Klaus Kinski through the entire shoot. There's another story of Kinski taking a Winchester rifle and shooting it into a crowded hut with 45 men inside who were preventing him from getting any sleep. That is a miracle that no one died. Herzog took the rifle from him, and I think to this day he still has it. So my question is, what in the world was it that made Herzog hire Kinski 4 more times to go through this torture?
Well, so Ethan did say something in when we first talked about that opposites attract, and maybe they brought the best out of each other because they had this contemptuous relationship. That's what I thought. So we got Bill B, then Jeff, and then Wally.
Right. Yeah, actually, I think it really served me well to see that documentary, My Best Fiend, because he gets into it. And it seems like Kinski is almost like a doppelganger for Herzog's id. It's like Herzog himself is a very laid back guy, but I think he's got a lot of passion seething inside him. And there was something that he found incredibly alluring about Kinski as a man and as a performer. And apparently he lived with him for about 3 months, years before they did their first film together. And Kinski drove him crazy and nearly killed him a couple of times. But he says, if there are certain film roles that I have to use this guy, regardless of how hard it is. And so they had this like really problematic relationship starting as early as 70 and going until Kinski's death in 91. I think they finally kind of called off having any kind of a relation a couple of years before Kinski died. But Herzog really did see something in Kinski that he felt like he couldn't get from any other actor. And he never completely articulates it, but he talks about it over and over again in this documentary.
True. Okay, Jeff?
Kinski and Herzog are pretty inseparable in their careers. And from what I've read in different places about the both of them, the one thing I feel pretty secure in saying is that they're both basically liars. A lot of what you hear about their relationship, I take a lot of it with just a grain of sand, because like I know I've read excerpts from Kinski's bio, and he talks about like he literally every name in the book he calls Herzog that, and I think of that and I said, well, yeah, but you worked with him 5 times, so there's a legend that they sat down together to compose some of the insults that Kinski was going to write about him. So I take a lot of that vitriol with the kind of a grain of salt. You know, I don't think it's anywhere near what they like to play up as this relationship.
Okay, so then I'm sorry, I forgot who. Oh, Wally.
My guess is my simple answer is the end results. You know, just looking at Kinski in this movie, it's like it's a sight to behold. You know, intense character, like actually literally deforms himself. He clearly gave Herzog what he was looking for, and the only way to get Kinski in your movie is to cast Kinski in your movie. So you know.
And pay him what he wants.
Right.
You know, I'm thinking a lot about what Bill said in the beginning about Kinski having the same face the entire time and seeing, you know, in the intent. And I'm wondering if it just ties back into the whole thing that Ethan said about him being the same madness the entire time, that he was just who he was that whole time. So his expressions and his, you know, his scowl was just his character, and that's how he worked it out. I don't know. Yeah. All
right. Great.
Speaking as a doctor. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. Okay, Bob.
Oh,
we got.
Sorry. One sec. Go ahead, Bob. But I got a question from Suzanne in the chat.
And I think there's Jim too.
Yeah.
I have to congratulate the entire group. We've gone 1 hour and 7 minutes without once saying the T word.
So we'll go to Jim next. On that note, Jim, did you have your hand up? Oh, you're muted.
Yes, I did.
There you go. Go
There
ahead.
we go. Yeah. Nobody really talked much about the opening sequence other than saying it was great. One of the things that it reminded me of was Charlie Chaplin's Gold Rush movie, where people are going over the past, and
Oh, yeah.
a whole slew of people, and I just thought, ooh, this is neat. This is the same sort of thing. And I like both of those sequences really well.
So earlier in the chat, Suzanne had a question about, were we ever told what was in that guy's hand? You know, the point where they said they were going to chop his hand off and see what was in it. Did we ever find out what was in his hand?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I didn't think so either, but
yeah.
Do we have a guess about what it was?
I don't know. Jeff, did you
I don't think you ever know, and I couldn't really hazard a guess. And to me, the whole point of it is that it doesn't matter, because they believe there's something there, much like they believe there's El Dorado. So it's just a fixation they have. I can't think of what it would be.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Awesome.
All right. Well, before we close, first of all, it's great to see you guys again, as I said at the opening, and thank you for taking a chance on this one. I know some of you it didn't turn you on. Others of you it did. So thank you for watching it. And let's talk a little bit about recommendations. So now, technically, this first film is not a recommendation because the library doesn't own it on DVD. But since some of you have already mentioned it, I can talk about it. And it's the documentary that Bill and some others have mentioned called My Best Fiend. And it explores the relationship between Herzog and Kinski. And it's really a tremendous film. And you do learn a little bit more about why these two guys and how these two guys work together. They really were a perfect match in some ways. And this documentary explores that. Again, unfortunately, it's not available through the library or Marina, but it is playing on Amazon Prime. So if you have that, you can see that now. And again, that's technically not a recommendation because I'm not supposed to talk about things we can't access through the library. Anyway, next, another Werner Herzog movie, Fitzcarraldo from 1982, is a movie that we don't have at the library right now, but you can get it through Marina, and it is also on Amazon Prime. It has some things in common with Aguirre. It's the story of Brian Sweeney Fitzgerald, played by Kinski, a man driven to build an opera house in the middle of a South American jungle. Now, in order to build this opera house, Fitzgerald needs to physically move a steamship from one river to another by dragging it over a mountain, which they actually do in the film with no special effects. It's amazing. Lots of parallels to Aguirre, and Kinski is a little bit more likable in this role, maybe. There's also a documentary on the making of this film called Burden of Dreams, where you can see the real life hysterical Kinski going at it. I'll check on that and see if it is available through Marina. And then finally, there is a film that is on Canopy, and it's called The Return of Martin Guerre. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Guerre, a French title, from 1982. It actually takes place in about the same time that Aguirre takes place, in the 16th century. And this is about a man named Martin Guerre who returns to his village in southwestern France after being away at war for nearly 10 years. And after all that time, everyone, including his family, thought that he was surely dead. Some of the locals believe that the man is an imposter, yet he knows everything about the people in the village. He knows its entire history and more. This is a really, really interesting film. The film stars Gerard Depardieu and was remade in 1993 as Summersby, starring Richard Gere and Jodie Foster. The version I'm recommending on Canopy is less Hollywoodized and, in my opinion, a much better film. So there's 3 or 2.5 recommendations for you: The Return of Martin Guerre, Fitzcarraldo, and My Best Fiend. Okay. Wow, I can't tell you guys how great it is to see you again. And Bob, I'm sorry, I think you have something.
I've got one more for you, Andy. There's
yeah, Jeff has one too.
Okay.
A documentary of Herzog eating his shoe after Earl Morris. I tell you, these guys would make a movie about anything.
That's right. That is a fun one to watch.
You have to see his Gates of Heaven is on Canopy, because that's one I've heard before. So I have to look at that one. Go ahead, Jeff. You have another one. You're muted.
Just to follow up on Andy's recommendation of Fitzcarraldo, I just want to recommend this. It's a book called Conquest of the Useless, which is Herzog's diary of the making of Fitzcarraldo. It very much points, and as you can imagine, Klaus Kinski figures pretty prominently in this one as well. It's not so much nuts and bolts about putting a film together, but it is very much about being on the location and the logistics of trying to do that. So I'd certainly recommend that.
Thank you.
Conquest of the Useless.
And did you have a question, Ethan? Your hand was up.
Just an additional recommendation.
Sure.
On the topic of Aguirre, a movie that I watched probably a year ago. It was made in 2016. It's called The Lost City of Zed. And it's another of El Dorado. And while I was watching Aguirre, they're basically the same movie. They are very, very similar in terms of content, in terms of characters and cinematography. They're both very, very beautiful. I would say Lost City of Zed even more so. It's less about a descent into madness and more a Hollywood-esque search for untold riches, but it's the least Hollywood-esque Hollywood movie you'll see. It's very, very, very slow. It's an hour longer than Aguirre. Yeah, that's the main bad part, the main drawback. Yes, but I think if you liked Aguirre, I think you would like Lost City of Zed.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Ethan, is it streaming anywhere, or how did
Oh,
you
I'm sorry.
access it?
I forgot to
That's
mention
okay.
that. Yes, it is. I only mentioned it because a lot of movies that are on Canopy are also on Amazon Prime. It's an Amazon original and is streaming exclusively on Prime, but you can rent it from other major retailers.
Great. Super.
Andy, what was the one about Martin Aguirre? What was the name of that one?
It's called The Return of Martin Aguirre.
Okay.
And it's Guerre. I can put it in, or you're
Oh
putting
yeah,
it in the
because
chat right now.
while I was asking for the chat, so so I got the three. I got Fitzcarraldo. No, I missed the second one you said.
The second one, Fitzcarraldo, and then Burden of Dreams is the documentary.
Burden of Dreams.
And I can put that in the email for next week too.
Okay.
I'll be glad to do that. I think Sue's got one thing to say.
Yeah,
I have to go back to a book, The Lost City of the Monkey God, by Douglas Preston. Talks about these guys going into uninhabited Nicaragua, I think, and it's a similar type of thing if you like these sort of expeditions.
Yeah, that's a fun book and an exciting book too. Yeah, good call. All right, well, I've kept you guys up a little later than I usually do, but thank you for hanging with me, and thank you again for watching the movie, talking about the movie, and just getting together. I mean, it's just great hanging out with you guys. I really, really look forward to that every time. So that's it for tonight. So please join us next week for our discussion of The Proud Rebel with Alan K. Rohde. Tell your friends, and I will see you then.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right, thank you so much. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks,
Thank you, Ethan. Come on back.
We'll hope to see you
I will,
again.
definitely.
And get your dad on camera next time too.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Hi, Dad.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.